Yet for all of us, this is the difficult part, isn't it? Serving the Lord with faithfulness, in truth, in sincerity. Someone once said that the real test of faithfulness to God is, in most cases, our power to continue steadfastly in the course of conduct when the excitement of conflict is gone. In other words, it's easier to follow God when we are battling for that faith, isn't it? When someone is there head to head, toe to toe, eye to eye with us, battling us on our faith in God. It's easier to maintain that than when everything is nice, everything is good, everything is going along well, and then we tend to slip away. Now, if you want a little history on that, go back and read the Old Testament. If you want a little history on that, go back and read the New Testament. If you want a little more history, go back and read the Renaissance and the Reformation and the medieval churches and all of the church ever since. When things got easy, the people dispersed. They left God. As long as they were in the thick of battle, things were good. So Joshua comes to them. And notice these words. He says, choose whom you will serve. We've all probably heard that phrase. I know when I told Gary this morning what I was preaching on, he says, we used to have that up in our house. We used to have a sign that says, choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Did you have one of those? Did we have one of those? My mother's saying, yes, we did. A lot of people had those. But I don't want you to miss this. You notice Joshua never says that you can just let it slide. He says choose. You have to choose. And he didn't say you could just choose anything. He says choose this day which God you will serve. Are you going to serve one of the gods of the Amorites? Are you going to serve one of the gods of the Egyptians? In our case, are we going to serve one of the gods of the economy, of politics, of power, of all sorts of things? Or will we choose the one God? Choose whom you will serve. So it's not if you will serve, it is whom you will serve. We need to throw out this notion that somehow we are all self-made. We can do it ourselves. Everything I got on my own. I owe nothing to anyone. Really? You saw the video this morning, right? Whole chain of events. And I can show you another video almost exactly like that is just the opposite. How one bad behavior can lead to another reaction, which leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to something catastrophic. You are influencing lives whether you want to or not. One of the dumbest statements I ever heard was by an NFL player who was being criticized for his bad behavior as not being a very good role model to children. He says, that's okay. I never set out to be a role model for children. Too bad it came with the job. You are a role model whether you want to be or not. And you are role models whether you want to be or not. Paul says, serve in the same way that I do. Be imitators of me. Now, why did he say that? Well, because it's a little hard to be imitators of Christ Jesus if you don't know what Christ Jesus did or how he looked or how he behaved. So Paul says, I've seen that. I know what that is. So follow me. Follow my example. That's pretty bold. Do you dare do that? You better. Because people are following you whether you want them to or not. You tell somebody you're a Christian, and then you go out and cut them off in traffic. You short them change at the bank. You do some unscrupulous business practice, and they say, Christian? Bad practice? Ah, that's how that works. Okay. But the opposite is true as well. When they see your steadfast faithfulness, when the times get difficult, and you remain true to God, they see that as well. Whom will you serve is what Joshua asked, not if you are going to serve. Then there's rewards and consequences. That's the good part, right? Spells out what happens if they obey, what happens if they don't obey. You can't serve the Lord. Is that Al Pacino? No. I don't know who that is. You remember? You can't handle the truth. Well, Joshua is saying, you can't serve the Lord. It's not that he's trying to drive them away. It's not that he's trying to make them unbelievers. What he's saying is, be careful. This is critical. Don't take this lightly. Because if you say you're going to serve God and then you don't, he will not hold you guiltless. Remember. And then the witnesses. You always have to have witnesses, right? Always have to have witnesses. Two people can't enter into a contract, let alone two parties into a covenant without witnesses. Now, in the Near East, whenever two nations would enter into a treaty, their witnesses were the gods of that nation. You know, the ones they carved out of wood and then put on their fireplace? Yeah, I'd like to see them get testimony out of those. But in this particular case, Joshua says, the witness is you. You're signing this, you're witnessing against yourselves. But just so you'll remember, later on in the chapter, Joshua takes a very large stone and he sets it up and he puts it under an oak tree. And he says, this rock will give witness as well. Every time people go by here, they're going to remember this covenant. Every time they see that stone, they're going to remember what you said, the choice that you made. And they'll hold that against you if you don't keep your word. And finally, they deposit that treaty, that document, and God holds that in his heart. It is very much a Near Eastern treaty. And yet, it is very special. Sometimes we overlook the power of a covenant. Sometimes we are not quite sure that people are going to live by that. And probably we should be uncertain because people often let us down. People have a very hard time keeping covenants, keeping promises. Even though they mean well, it's difficult. There was a man in the Old Testament, in the book of Samuel, Mephibosheth. He was a son of Jonathan, who was the son of Saul. He was a lame man, it says. He had 2 crippled feet, and he had a very difficult time walking or even standing. And when Saul fell out of power and David now was ruling the nation, you remember the stories of David? He was this kind of overwhelming, mythical figure. Huge in stature, at least. No one dared oppose David. Why? Well, David had won so many battles. David was the ultimate warrior. Now, what was very common in the Middle East at that time, or the Near East at that time, was that if you lost the battle, if you were thrown out of power, the new ruling king would come in and they would just wipe out the entire former ruling family. You don't think that crossed Mephibosheth's life and his thoughts? So he goes into hiding. He hides away in this faraway city, trying to avoid David as much as possible. And finally, David raises the question. He says, are there no other descendants of Jonathan? Because Jonathan was his friend. David never wanted Jonathan to die, but he did. He wanted to honor Jonathan, so he sent servants out to look for this crippled little man who was